Want to ask you a question, something you brought up to me the other day, and something I've pondered for years. I've heard different ideas around this. Uh, who knows what's true, what's not true, but who is Satoshi?
So,
hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Joined here by Andrew Scott Easton, CEO, founder of Mastermind. We're going to be speaking today about Bitcoin mining. We're going to be talking about Web3. We're going to be talking about all different perspectives that you're probably not familiar with, starting with Satoshi, moving into all of the different groups that are getting into the space at the moment. Andrew, thanks for taking the time to join the podcast here.
Thanks, Jason. This is amazing. I'm really excited. I've been preparing all week for this, so let's just jump right into it.
Excellent. Excellent. The preparation is mutual. Looking forward to getting into it. Let's begin with your background. Where did it all start for you? How did you get into this world of entrepreneurship and Web3?
All right. Well, you're going to like this, so let me get into it. So I'm Andrew Scott Easton. I'm the founder and CEO of Mastermind.xyz. We are a Bitcoin manufacturer, and we're currently launching multiple vehicles and investment funds for investors to get into Bitcoin mining. It's an incredible tax-advantaged vehicle, and with our development costs, you can actually make your own Bitcoin for about $45,000. And when you can make a widget for 45K and you can sell it instantly for 115K and you have no employees and there's zero marketing, it's an incredible business. So how I got into that, let me actually start from the beginning. So I'm a Los Angeles native, born and raised in LA, and got really lucky. So my dad was actually a movie producer. So I grew up on the sets of Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles, Jurassic Park, Little Giants, Into the Blue, Deep Impact, like you name it. I lived in Hawaii when we were filming. He worked on Magnum PI when I was growing up. So I was always around advanced technology. My dad had StarTAC phones. We had DSL. I have pictures of me like on the computer when I'm 3 years old. And so I became a computer geek early on, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So early I was one of those guys that had like the lemonade stands. Like I have a picture of me doing that. Then I launched my own, private tutor school for the neighborhood kids when I was like 6 years old. By the time I was in high school, I was actually running my own PC repair business. So I've been deep into computers my whole life. I was running this business. And at the same time, I actually became a professional e-gamer. So I ran a sports team in the early 2000s before you could actually make money doing it. Yeah. So I was a professional gamer. I went to tournaments. I was a CPL champion. And at the same time, I had to, get serious. So I was going to school, getting my business degree because I was like, all right, I want to be an entrepreneur. I am figuring it out. I'm testing all these things. I don't know what to do yet. So let me go get that business degree. That's going to teach me how to be an entrepreneur. I graduated, and even though I was kind of running businesses, I graduated and I was like, I still don't know how to start a business. So let me go get a job. Let me go work for a big company. Let me figure out what they do, and then I'll just copy it. So I go and I get my first job out of college, and I work at Northrop Grumman, which is a massive company. And cutting to the chase, I again didn't learn how to launch a business at Northrop, but instead had the most unbelievable experience. I ended up going into a high-performing rotation program and ended up running a huge portfolio of about $675 million in government contracts. Star Wars Airborne Laser, Virgin Galactic Spaceship One. I was doing drones, microchips, satellites, things I can't talk about. And then I ended up going back and getting my MBA part-time. And then from there, just continued to advance my career immensely for about 10 years. So I went to EY and became a strategy consultant, worked on huge transformations, went back, was a professor at USC, and then also got hired away. So this kind of leads into my blockchain AI space that I'm in now. So 2014, I'm at EY, and I found this tiny little group of consultants. So I'm doing strategy work. I'm running like Sony Pictures finance transformation. I actually got out of there right before the hack happened, very luckily. So my teammates were stuck there. Dude, that was a crazy story. So I was there too when Korea was hacking Sony. And then this little group, we acquired a company called Bedrock, and it was this little design consulting agency, like a bunch of like IDEO, Frog, Stanford design school guys. I was like, what are you guys doing over there? This looks cool. And I like embedded myself into that group and discovered like digital transformations, AI, blockchain. I ended up working for a gentleman by the name of Keith Stryer, who became a huge mentor. I became his chief of staff. And then, career decision point, he asked me to be his chief of staff and follow him. And I think I told you this already. Um, and I said no because I got recruited to go be a chief of staff for a CEO at like a real estate SaaS company. And that seemed like my first big, great, I'm going to be an executive at this company. Like, that's my big hit. And I took that. That failed. So that CEO fired me in 9 months. And Keith left EY to move on to become the head of artificial intelligence at NVIDIA and has hence moved to AMD. So I know what my stock options would have been worth if I followed him there, and I know what his are. So we stayed in touch, and that leads to the rest of the story. So I actually, when I got fired from that CEO, I went all in on entrepreneurship. So I started my own company. And where I started was I discovered a random product and I wondered if I could sell it on Amazon. So I fell into becoming an Amazon seller and got really deep into Amazon, built an Amazon digital marketing agency, launched my own Kickstarter campaign, launched my own products, private label, wholesaling, working with really big name brands, working with small brands, and just for 3 or 4 years got deep into e-commerce. And then at the same time was doing independent consulting. So I kept getting tapped by really big companies. So I actually helped build Walmart.com. So I worked for them for about 3 years at Walmart Labs, working for the head of strategy there and building out like the entire strategic plan to build Walmart.com. I helped
Curious.
Yeah, I helped the Augusta National launch the Taste of the Masters during the pandemic, which was super cool. So we helped deliver 10,000 boxes of pimento cheese sandwiches and the cookies and the peanuts and snacks and everything. Huge product for them now. It does $2 million a year in revenue, and they've done it every single year after since I launched it. So I did that. I worked for Dole Packaged Foods and did e-commerce strategy. I helped them launch a smoothie subscription competitor to Daily Harvest. I helped I helped run the Warner Brothers Discovery integration. I ran the IMO for a $43 billion M&A project in October, like through October of 2023. So I was still doing all this really like heavy corporate stuff because I kept getting tapped by my network. This was all just me. Like people would reach out to me and be like, "Hey, we need you for this." And then I'm also figuring out how to run a business, how to launch a business. I was trying to find the right product. I was trying to find like, should I scale a digital marketing agency? Should I hire people? Like I was exploring tons of models. And ultimately, most of the things I got really good at was like finding opportunities. And in 2017, I was breeding crypto kitties. My wife is like looking over my shoulder, like, what are you doing, you nerd? Like, what is this? And I'm like, I think this is weird, but I think I see something here. I went and I raised a little mini fund from some friends and family. And I swooped up all the Ledger Nanos. I went to Ledger in France and said, hey, I want to distribute these. And I got them all for like $30. And I waited until the boom and put them on Amazon and was the number one product on Amazon. They were going for like $150 a pop. And I was doing 60 grand a day in sales just on those little, devices. I have pictures of the boxes in my garage, like literally in my kitchen next to my baby chair because my kids were being born at the same time. And I found that picture the other day of just Ledger Nanos, like boxes and boxes of Ledgers. So I did that. It crashed. And then I moved away from blockchain for a while. And then 2020 came and it started getting really popular again. And I went in super deep. So I got into NFTs, I got CryptoPunks, I got into this one project called like Dented Feels and happened to get the number one NFT. And then I got an offer for 200K, which I didn't take.
Yeah.
When the pandemic hit, I was running all of those big projects. I was doing Dole, I was working for the Masters tournament, and then on the tail end, Warner Brothers. Oh, and I did one more project. I worked for a private equity firm and built like an HVAC roll up B2B portal for them. So I've got skill sets that are just unreal across the board. Lastly, during the pandemic, I worked with a partner and built a PPE business, and we delivered $12 million of N95s and helped Amazon build their PPE portal. So I raised 140K from flexport.org via like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Ed Norton and Paul Graham, and they helped us cover the freight shipping for these masks like super early on. So it was in running the mask business. So we're doing that successfully. I had a really big deal. I had a huge glove deal with Amazon that fell through after 4 months because we couldn't confirm. I couldn't get to Malaysia and make sure the gloves were real. That was a crazy space full of scammers and the weirdest stuff I'd seen. But one day, a supplier, actually a mask supplier, he was making made in USA masks, and he like just randomly said one day, "Hey, Andrew, check out what's in my office." I was like, "Is that an S19J Pro? Where did you get that?" He's like, "I figured out the supply chain. They're really hard to get. They're so expensive right now." I'm like, "I know. Can I get some of those? I'll flip them on Amazon, make a killing." And he's like, "Flip them on Amazon?" He's like, "Look what happens when you plug them in and go public." And I was like, my MBA years were like, "What? Excuse me? Like, what did you just say?" And I literally drove to his office in Rancho Cucamonga, where he had this huge mask factory. And then on this panel wall, he had 10 Bitcoin miners running, and they were just screaming like banshees. And I'd go up to his office. We go through this model. I finally understand it. I'm like, "Great, I'm your COO. We're going to go raise money for this. Let's go." So I put together the team. I build the deck. I build the advisory board. I bring in a bunch of my contacts from my network, and we go to market to raise $15 million for 20% equity in the company. We ended up, through his network, he had built and sold 5 other companies for like $500 million. He was really had brought interesting products into the US, like e-cigarettes, and
Okay.
sold to Philip Morris. So really interesting guy. He had connections. He ultimately got us to an offer of 196 million from an investment bank out of New York.
Wow.
And yeah, my former boss from EY was like, "Bro, you're rich, dude. You did it." Like I was telling him about this. Of course, then Luna, 3AC, FTX, everything starts crashing, and we can't finish the negotiation. We can't really finish the deal. We try to continue on. We try to actually go raise, from other people, but the whole market shuts down. And then essentially my CEO gives up. He moves back to his old business, and our president also passed away unexpectedly. These were two older guys, and one of them had a heart attack. So he's like, "Yeah, I'm out." He moved on, but I was hooked. So I moved pretty quickly to build my own network because I didn't have access to the machines and I didn't have access to the capital. So I had to start all over. And so I start networking and reach out to a friend, get connected to someone, and they're like, "Oh, you want to get into Bitcoin mining? There's a conference coming up. You just should fly out. Everybody's going to be there. It's in Madeira, Portugal." It's called Bitcoin Atlantis. And I like turn to my wife, and she's like, "Wait, what? You're flying to Portugal without me for some weird conference in Bitcoin?" She's like, "Okay, go for it." So
This
flew
is
to
like
the
the crypto
conference
kitties all over again. We're gonna have more in
all
our
over.
kitchen. Yeah.
Uh, she did eventually catch on, and she says this all the time. She's like, "If I wasn't so conservative, we'd be millionaires because Andrew would have gotten into all these weird things earlier." So she's like, now she's starting to trust me.
Okay.
She always thought crypto was a scam. Now she's like heavy. She's into crypto. She's an AI genius. We met in business schools, and she runs the M&A and AI team at PricewaterhouseCoopers. So she still got that consulting background, but now she gets it. She's actually an NFT collector and has NFT friends now, thanks to me. So it's all full circle.
She's ready for the next opportunity of yours. I get it.
Oh, yeah. And this she finally believes. So we're into this heavy. So I flew out to Madeira, Portugal. Bitcoin Atlantis was the most amazing conference. I couldn't believe it. And huge people were there. Michael Saylor was there, and Jack Mallers, and guys I didn't even know. Technologies I hadn't even heard of. Like everybody's on Nostr. I didn't even know what Nostr was when I showed up. It's pretty embarrassing. But I get there, I learn quickly, I meet some amazing people, and then I basically, in 2 months, had machines live in New York. So I launched my first 100 machines. And the reason I did this is there's one other piece. Out of all the money I lost and all the crash of the Web3 scene from 2000 on,
Mhm.
I happened to do one smart thing, which is I reached back out to Keith Stryer when I was doing the Bitcoin mine and said, "Hey, Keith, I'm raising money for this Bitcoin mining company. Do you want to invest? I know you're pretty successful now at NVIDIA."
Yeah.
That wasn't, I just assumed. But he said, "Andrew, I've actually never invested in a startup." And I was like, "Oh, okay, interesting." He's like, "But I just did. And Andrew, I don't understand blockchain because AI and blockchain couldn't be different. He's like, AI is the black box of black boxes, and blockchain is the white box of white boxes. And he's like, however, Andrew, I just invested in my first blockchain company because they've wrapped a black box with a white box, and they're called Jiritsu. And I was like, ooh, this sounds interesting. Tell me more. So he introduced me to the Jiritsu team, and I ended up angel investing in them alongside. I brought my father-in-law, so we both invested in Jiritsu, and I invested before I even knew. I knew what the technology could do. It was incredible. They've built like this ZK MPC cloud, so they can do off-chain computation without you needing to use a third party like AWS or Azure or Google. So it can do the computation, and then it's verifiable on chain. So it's verifiable compute. And that technology is powerful. You can now actually prove that there's reserves. So they like power BlackRock's BTC ETF, and their technology proves that BlackRock actually has Bitcoin in their reserve without it's an oracle, so it doesn't expose the secrets, but it can do the validation and say, yes, it's there. So great technology. I didn't know what they were going to do with it. And then they launched into real world assets, tokenization. I've gotten extremely deep into that space, very, very interested in it. And I built a product with them because I saw the connection point, because they're trying to tokenize all these assets. And I'm like, hey guys, has anybody tokenized Bitcoin mining machines? Because they're the only real world asset that actually happens to print tokens that are very native to your whole ecosystem. And they're like, ooh, that sounds interesting. So I launched the 100 machines. We put this product together and we pitched it to their customers, and they said, we love it. It's not enough. We need $10 million each. So my company Mastermind today is launching a product of tokenized Bitcoin mining. And that is the first product that can actually be purchased and owned by these really big digital organizations. So DAOs and L1s and L2s that have these huge treasuries of $4 billion, but it's all in tokens. It's all in, there's some ETH, there's some Bitcoin, and then there's a bunch of their own token, and there's a bunch of other tokens. It's like, what are those all worth? Who knows? But their goal is they need to grow that treasury. They need to get return. They need to get yield. They need to do stuff with it. And they were always forced to go get black box yield, which is like Three Arrows Capital, like hand you our money. And where does the 20% come from? I don't know. And I said, guys, look at Bitcoin mining. This is real yield. This is an actual asset that's going to print the Bitcoin straight back to your treasury. And it's at like a 20%, 30% IRR. And they're like, whoa, okay. We really, really want this. So that's where we are today. We're building up funds because we need to bring investors in to build the physical side first, and then we can tokenize each of those funds and we can sell them to these digital entities.
And imagine you have a lot of conversations going on around that right now. I mean, first of all, I just want to say, I feel like I haven't done enough after hearing your whole career path and have so many similarities and different areas, or maybe been at some events and crossed some of the same paths there as a whole. But you know, all resonating from that entrepreneur mindset of, hey, I'm creating a lemonade stand, a tutoring business. I'm gonna start, you know, being the PC repair guy, into gamer, CPL champion, everything you did at school, being a professor, being at Northrop Grumman, moving to agency under something I could relate to and respect a lot. Everything on the Amazon side, I know what goes into that. I actually got into crypto in 2017. So while you were collecting the crypto kitties and selling those on Amazon, curious what you're doing on the digital side back then as well. That's when we started working on our first Web3 campaigns. And then, you know, ups and downs through that 2020, 2022. We were actually working with Voyager when Three Arrow Capital went delinquent. And
yep, I remember that.
Old domino effect. A decent amount of Luna. Was actually very bullish on Terra and working with groups in the Terra ecosystem. So glad to hear you got back into it and that you were able to really kickstart things in Madeiras. Imagine that was a great location for an event at that, and that Keith was able to bring you into RWA and some of the AI technology. I know what it feels like to miss out on opportunities. So hearing the NVIDIA path makes me look in hindsight towards different things as well too. But overall, you're a strategist. You seek out these opportunities that the market's primed for. You understood what Bitcoin mining could yield, and you said, hey, I'm going to tokenize this and have a lot more people sharing it. I mean, the way you started out the conversation saying, hey, 45K into 115K, that's a pretty good deal, right? I think
Hmm.
that resonates with everyone. I can only imagine some of the conversations you're having on the institutional side and ETFs and being able to get groups BTC at lower price
Hmm.
through this approach as a whole. What do those partnership conversations look like for you right now?
Right now, so one thing that's happening right now is I do have the hottest product on the street, which is the SPV, because everybody is starting to think about mining. So backing up, I really love this. This is an advisor that gave this to me. Starting from just first principles of Bitcoin, there's only two ways to get Bitcoin. You either mine it or you buy it from a miner or an open market that originally came from a miner. So, just from that first principle standpoint, mining is the cheapest way to acquire Bitcoin, just
Yes.
by the nature of economics. So, that's our core principle. And then on top of that, what I'm turning into, this is really cool, is MicroStrategy is kind of built this concept around Bitcoin that people are just starting to understand of these financial wrappers. So he's treating Bitcoin like it's oil, and he thinks he's Rockefeller, and he's like, Rockefeller was bullish on oil at the bottom, he was bullish on oil at the top, and he's bullish on oil through all the volatility. But his idea was oil can produce jet fuel, and then it can produce pharmaceuticals, it can produce organics, and produce this and this and this. And Saylor's thinking about Bitcoin the same way. It's not just Bitcoin. Now he's creating these financial layers. You want fixed income? Here's a fixed income version. You want high growth? You want double X leverage? Here's a double X leverage version. So I love how he's treating Bitcoin as the commodity. Mastermind is now becoming that for mining. So we're becoming the wrapper for mining that meets investment mandates. And I've got multiple door knocks from people coming to me saying, hey, I've got a pool of investors. They want to get into mining. They're going to want it in a particular way. Can you piece this together for me? And the answer is yes, we have everything. We have the full operational mining team live today running. My team's deployed over 5% of the Bitcoin network, over 500 megawatts. They've done Riot's immersion cooling. And then I've got all the SPV pieces, including all the tax pieces, which are really critical because bonus depreciation just got locked in permanently. And that's why everybody's going crazy right now. And then I've got all the treasury management and all the Bitcoin management, which most of those financial advisors don't even understand yet how they would help their end customers manage the Bitcoin once they get it. But I've got all sorts of financial advisors, investors, investment bankers, all coming together to launch SPVs in Bitcoin mining. And we're positioned as kind of the premier firm to offer that.
And how scalable is this?
Highly scalable. So that's what my lawyer asked yesterday. He's like, I want to put in $15 million. I'm like, done. We could do that tomorrow. My team's gotten access to all the major energy sites that are available in the US. We're working on projects right now that are 7 gigawatts out of Ohio and Pennsylvania with like 500 miles of pipeline. So we have everything we would need, and we have access to the machines. That's the other critical piece. So that's the triangle of Bitcoin mining. You need capital, you need access to low cost energy, and you need access to these machines. So we have the energy, we have the machines, and now we're the ones creating the first capital instruments that are coming into Bitcoin mining that nobody else has thought about. The public companies are taking just a different approach. Bitcoin mining to them is something that they can abuse, and it's so profitable. It's Bitcoin mining is almost as profitable as the timeshare industry, and there's a reason no timeshare companies are public because they don't want to disclose how profitable they are. But Bitcoin miners, you can actually go look how much. The main reason Bitcoin mining publicly traded companies don't even outperform Bitcoin is because the executive compensation is outrageous. These guys pay themselves $75 million a year to run a Bitcoin mining company. It's ridiculous. And I flip that. I'm like, that makes no sense. To get the best commodity, you got to mine. And to get mining, you don't get 20% while I keep 80%. You keep 80%. I'll take a 20% fee for helping you, but you own the machines, you own the Bitcoin. I'm setting this up for you. And that's what this fund structure is. And the way it works for investors, I love it. So an SPV vehicle, when you invest in this, instead of buying a Bitcoin for 120K, you put it into an SPV. We buy the machines for you, we run them, and in about 3 years, we could exit, we could sell the machines, or we could tokenize and sell to the DAOs. and you would get back your 120K plus a full Bitcoin, plus some bonuses from all of our partners, plus the entire bonus depreciation passed through to you on a K1. And so the net effect of that, your all-in cost of Bitcoin, including that tax benefit, gets as low as $45,000 per coin. So that's where we get to
Amazing.
that number. Yeah.
And on the mining side, you talked about practices, things other people aren't doing. How are you guys able to fulfill this in a more efficient way? I know there's a lot of Bitcoin mining solutions out there. We
Mm-hmm.
had touched on it in our conversations.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you guys better?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that make us better. One is the tokenization angle and sort of the access to these partners like Jairitsu and these distribution channels.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else really has DAOs, L1s, or L2s that are aware of this or want to purchase this from them. So I found one gap in the market, which is this DAO L1, L2 space. Nobody else is tapping that, and I'm not telling too many people about it. The other differentiators, one is really how professional our team is. So there's also, I mean, I'll say this humbly, there's not anybody like me in the space. There's not EY, Northrop Grumman, MBA professors coming into Bitcoin mining. Most of them are coming either from the financial side. So there's a lot of guys that are coming in and understanding, they're raising capital, they're trying to go public. There's honestly quite a lot of just data center guys, energy guys. So they really understand the energy, they understand the machine application of the energy to make money, but there's nobody that comes in from this very professional, high quality Northrop Grumman white glove touch approach. So for example, something that we're about to offer to our customers is we're actually launching our first product, which is not going to be a fund. It's just going to be a direct mining service. So any investor, including yourself, including my friends, my family, who've all wanted to get into mining, we're writing a contract right now that allows us to do this in a way that is not a securities contract. So it's written so that you own the machines, we're managing them, this is what we do, this is what you do. But most importantly, at the end of the day, we're going to create a really comprehensive tax reporting and compliance documentation package that you get to hand to your CPA. That's just like, here you go. I just bought some miners. I don't know why I did it. I don't know what happened, but how much money did I save? And the CPA will have everything he needs in order to process that. So that's what we're offering. It's ease of use, it's compliance, it's all packaged in one. And our partners in this, Fenwick and West is our law firm. They're very well regarded and large, along with multiple other partners like Digital Asset Management Group, who's one of the
Mm-hmm.
first really large um, funds in this space that's launching. So it's also the partners that we have. So the partnerships, the teams, top of the line, and then because of that, we have this viewpoint to make these products that people aren't even thinking about. So people know there's a huge tax mining, opportunity right now, but they haven't gone far enough into the customer journey to be like, this is what our investor wants at the end of the day. He wants a fat file that he just hands to a CPA. We're like, yep, we're going to make that. And nobody else is going to really get into that level of detail, is what we've seen.
All legit and a lot of value around it for someone who knows what the CPA could do with that type of packet. It's great that you guys are able to package this all together. For
Mm-hmm.
any founders who are tuned in, what did you have to test out to get here? What recommendations would you have for them? And how have you been able to get this to the point it's at right now?
That's a great point. I have a very unique view. So I have a long-term lens, and I'm also, as you can tell, very spread out. Like I'm testing everything. I'm constantly doing stuff. So I'm not saying this works for everyone, but I'll explain my approach, and then I think people could take pieces from it. My approach is kind of a shotgun approach. I really, even when I went to Madeira, Portugal, I was going out there and just throwing out my ideas to people and seeing what kind of feedback I could get from them. So I'm constantly testing feedback. And it maybe even harkens back to a professor I had at USC in my entrepreneurship course that I loved that always said, have you talked to a customer today?
Mm.
And I think that's what I'm doing is whether it's an investor or someone on my team or someone I met at a networking event that I'm catching up with, I'm always treating that like I'm talking to a customer, and I tell them about what I'm doing, even if they don't want to hear about it. But that's good because I quickly push people away that I know don't want to be part of this. And what I've also done is created this this gravity effect because I've got a team. I mean, I've honestly got a team of maybe like 12 people now who've been around me for this project for the last 3 years, not being paid, are constantly helping me, are constantly they've been pulled into my little project because I've told them all about it because they're just sucked in. So it can polarize people where they're like, I'm not that interested in it. Or it really just, people are like, oh, Andrew's dedicated, he's persistent. That's the other thing that people like to see is a superpower of mine is that I'm rationally perseverant. And so even when I either look stupid or do something wrong or think something's not working, I'll be like, well, I don't care. Keep going. Like you're already locked in. Like I just ignore all the debt, technical debt or social debt or whatever debt I've laid waste to. I'm like, no, doesn't matter. Keep moving because you have no choice but to keep smashing through barriers. And that's what I found. I'm constantly, and you're doing well when you're constantly at the fog of war and you need like people to come help you sort of through that journey. I've hit a few of those moments recently, which has been interesting for me, where I actually reached a point where I'm like, I definitely don't know what I'm doing right now. Like, let me go find someone. Let me go, get the right resource.
But you have the right team around you, you have the right partners, you know who to talk to, rationally perseverant through it all. Love that term, by the way. How
Mm-hmm.
do you smash through these barriers when it doesn't work right out of the gate? How do you optimize? How do you manage things to a point of effectiveness, which I find as a commonality with the most successful leaders, founders, that
Mm-hmm.
grit to keep pushing through. You're testing out these things towards growth. Some aren't working. What's your best approach towards optimization?
Um, Optimization. That's probably the key word. I could probably be much better at optimizing. But the way I think I'm viewing the optimization is it's the way I define strategy. So I often ask my students this when I come in, like, how do you define strategy? You use words to, what does strategy mean? How are you being strategic? What is a company strategy? And their definitions could be all over the place. And actually, I'm curious, how would you define strategy?
I haven't had to articulate. I think I have actually been asked that on a panel before.
Mm-hmm.
When describing it, I like giving some type of example.
Mm-hmm.
So, a tangible. We're driving from Los Angeles to New York. How are we going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
What is our approach?
Mm-hmm.
It's the process of achieving a result. Uh, I think if I'm
I
putting it
like that.
into a few words,
Mm-hmm.
and that differs. So for us, we have a whole strategy product. I built the 8 point plan where
Mm-hmm.
it begins with listening, with research, competitor marketing audit. How are these other brands who are going after the same audiences achieving market share? I could
Mm-hmm.
list out 20 things that I look at for their ads, their organic content, their direct messaging, their publisher partnerships, their live events, everything they're doing to get third party validation, and then mapping out the audiences that we want to see the results produced by, the channels that we're going to reach them, the creative that's going to go into each of those
Mm-hmm.
mediums, partnerships that can help accelerate that, and then, of course, measurements. The only way to measure is with numbers. You got to put pen to paper on an algorithm. If we're working on a digital campaign, impressions, clicks, conversions, and then
Mm-hmm.
the strategy, the planning, it's more about the process than the end result. What questions did you ask yourself to get there? A good strategy should be concise and succinct. Meanwhile, it could be months, years of
Mm-hmm.
development behind it. We could be building out the ideal trip from Los Angeles to New York and where we're going and who we're going to see and the experience we're going to get and what we're going to do if we have to optimize and really planning some of that out. The
Mm-hmm.
ideation beforehand instead of just in the moment when you're stressed. So all of that would be part of my answer to strategy, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
the process of achieving a result and all of the underlying features to get there.
Yeah. I have found one word that I really like, and it
Okay.
defines pretty much everything you said. So when I think strategy, I think positioning.
Mm,
That's the word that I've discovered that I really like, positioning. You're positioning yourself across multiple levels, across multiple layers. And then strategy to me, going back to what happens when you hit a wall, strategy to me is I've climbed a mountain. I've gotten the view from the top of the mountain. Now I'm going to go, now I hit the top. Now I got to go down and climb the next mountain. And to me, the more mountains I climb, the better I can position myself. So strategy to me is about positioning yourself. And to position yourself, I'm constantly trying to climb mountains to see what's going on. Because strategy for me is the lay of the land, everything, the whole landscape, as much as possible. What's our government doing in blockchain? What are the states doing in blockchain? What are companies doing in blockchain? What are people doing in blockchain? All of that, you got to have, to me, strategy to understand where am I going to position myself? Where's my position in the market? And that's what I found is I found a really great position in the market that a lot of people haven't. I found a position with DAOs and L1s. I found a position with SPVs because investors want direct access to mining. And now I'm finding a position with this direct mining tax advantage product so people can just jump right in next week. So that's how I like framing it up and thinking about it. But that's maybe something you can add on to. It's not the perfect word because it doesn't describe everything, but to me, that explains more of like what's happening when you're being strategic. You're jockeying, you're positioning, you're trying to think about where should I be? What am I supposed to be doing? What's the next few steps?
And there can be action included in that word. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just a preparation.
Yeah, it's
It's a
live.
verb in its own right. So
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, I like the simplicity. I try to break things down into 3 words. There's the 313 method by Ryan Folan, who's been on the
Yeah.
podcast that I try to follow, where you break something down into 3 paragraphs, down into 3 sentences, then into 1 sentence, then into 3 words, and it's actually very difficult to do and be all encompassing. I like
Mm-hmm.
1 word. That's it's very powerful.
I like that.
And you're optimizing. You're on these peaks and determining the best place to be while doing the listening and getting the right information and determining the right position.
Mm-hmm.
How do you scale from there? I know it's what we're all playing for. I had some questions around it. Your lawyer had some
Mm-hmm.
questions about it. Looking at the total count of bitcoins and how long we're able to mine and how many people are able to come in and how many people are able to invest and get these tokenized assets.
Mm-hmm.
How do you scale? Tips, examples? You've done this at many points in your career path, your journey.
Mm-hmm.
What recommendations would you have for others?
Yeah. So recommendations for others, or do we want to talk about like my strategy to scale
Your
masterminds?
strategy to scale, and hopefully that resonates with viewers and listeners.
Yes. So my strategy to scale. Okay. I'll focus on this. My strategy to scale now is I'm going to call it my fundraising efforts because what I've been doing the last 9 months for Mastermind is going through a deep fundraise exercise, and that's what lands today with where I am with the products, where I finally understand my customers. I wasn't there 8 months ago, and if you look at my one pager pitch to you, it's totally different from what we have today. So it was through that journey. And moving forward, I'm getting ready to scale. So everything that I've been doing on the fundraising, now we're finally tuned into the right product and the right audience. Now we're about to scale. So now we're going to really put the fuel into each of the funnels and the distribution channels. And I'll probably get to work with you on actually some of that. But going back to what I explained by that is I started out, the last 20 years, I never raised money. I never raised capital. I just did everything myself, bootstrapped. Mastermind today is actually 100% mine still. And all the miners are mine that I invested in. But I finally was like, okay, I want to fundraise. And it wasn't for the company, it was actually for these funds. It was to go find an investor that wants to put 5 million bucks into an SPV. So the SPV was originally always the focus because ultimately I was trying to tokenize with Jiritsu. So I tried to go raise $10 million because I thought that was a great start. That's what one of the clients wanted. They're like, we want $10 million of tokenized Bitcoin miners. So that's where I started. And I realized I was like, okay, to fundraise, where do I start? Well, let me start with my network that I have. I started there and it was extremely challenging. They weren't the right investors. They were rich friends of mine and they were MBA friends of mine, but nobody fit. And then one connection finally came through, which was a cousin of mine who put me in touch with a VC firm that he knew personally. They gave me a shot. They gave me like 5 rounds of interviews with them, and that was critical because that really helped hone in on the pitch and hone in on what I was missing. They didn't invest. They're still kind of very interested, but waiting to see what I can build before they invest. So that I got lucky, but then I realized what else can I do? And someone had introduced me to a fundraise marketer. So I
Okay.
have a partner who is very incredible. His name's Johnny Aren, and he founded WeRaiseCo.io, and they were a professional fundraise marketer. And I was hesitant at first because I had talked to similar firms, and basically what he does is cold email campaigns. So he's trying to reach out just cold to an investor network from pool of emails he has, and I have the data. So far we've sent 52,900 emails, and we've actually had a 3.9% reply rate. So we've gotten 2,069 replies, and I've gotten on calls with over 50 investors. And each of those investors continue to improve the pitch, help me try and find like where the right product was, and ultimately got me down to a set of probably like 3 or 4 investors right now that are heavily committed, and one of which that works at a VC firm and who I actually flew out or invited and brought out to Vegas for the big event there, is looking to actually lead a seed round for me moving forward here. So we actually now have a path for the company to start to scale.
Those are good numbers. 3.9%, click-through response, another 50 investors. Sounds like
Mm-hmm.
2.5% more
Mm-hmm.
that are joining on the line with you, and that the conversations are valuable. Could definitely ramp that up. And I love how you're connected to the actual metrics. There's a lot of founders who just know something's working or not working, and you're not able to manage it. You're not able to move it. You're not able to ensure that it's hitting its results and taken up to the next level from there. So
Mm-hmm.
just the fact that you're doing that, I know you're on the right path, and I'll be looking forward to collaborating on the next chapters with you.
Mm-hmm.
Want to ask you a question, something you brought up to me the other day, and something I've pondered for years. I've heard different ideas around this. Uh, who knows what's true, what's not true, but who is Satoshi?
So let me tell you what actually happened. I went to BTC Vegas in May, and that was a really big event for me because I had been fundraising, and the one thing I think I told you is I did sign an LOI with Digital Asset Management Group. They're launching multiple funds in alternative assets and really cool stuff. I just found out more about like the racing horses. That's real. So there's tokenized racing horses in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and they're now coming to Europe. So you own the horse from when it's born all the way up to when it races, and you share in the earnings. It's crazy. So they're doing that. They're doing rocket ships. And then I'm their Bitcoin miner. So they're raising a fund, hopefully $25 million to deploy in. And Vegas was a big event because Juan from Digital Asset Management Group came out. We signed our contract live at a huge lunch. And one other investor that I had gotten connected to via these cold emails, um, he's like, "Oh, I really need to meet you." I talked to him maybe a few days before Vegas. He's like, "Oh, I really need to meet you. Like, this is insane what you have." And I accidentally invited him and said, "Oh, why don't you come out to Vegas? My treat." And he goes, "Okay." So I was like, "Oops." My wife is not going to like that. So I ended up paying for, like, I booked his flight with miles. I paid for his hotel room. I paid for all this and that. Flew him out, and I didn't realize it. He had just run Mayor Adams' like crypto event in New York, and so he's Mayor Adams' like crypto guy. Well, Mayor Adams came out to Vegas because of me.
Wow.
So Mayor Adams was out there with his whole crew. I kind of barely met him because I was doing my own thing and I had my group there. But this investor walked me around to everyone. Next thing I know, I met Brock Pierce. I'm at his pool party in Tao, and I'm just hanging out, and this really cool guy comes up to me. And these Bitcoin conferences are funny. It's like you all work for the same company, but you're just in different departments. And this is your corporate retreat. So you walk up and you're like, "Hi, I'm a Bitcoin miner. What do you do?" Like, that's literally how you can introduce yourself. This guy walked up and said, "Hi, I think I know more about Satoshi than anybody." And I was like, "Tell me more." We're in the middle of a pool party. Literally, I'm in the pool, like smoking a cigar and drinking soda water. And the guy actually walked me through his theory of who he thought Satoshi was and showed me some key pieces of evidence. And I'm pretty confident that he actually got it right. So the sequence of events, if you think about it, is Satoshi was a cryptographer from Washington State,
Mm-hmm.
and he worked for Microsoft. And you can actually tell if you go read some of his code. Code has fingerprints, and he uses some code in Bitcoin that it resembles like an older person that has a Microsoft back training. And Bitcoin was actually written on Microsoft on Windows, so it wasn't like a Linux program. So there's a little evidence there. And then what happened is he actually wrote a white paper on distributed ledger. So he's a cryptographer. He's the one that invented distributed ledger. And he was in these cypherpunk groups. So he was an extropian. So these guys like Hal Finney and Nick Szabo and all the other guys that have been Len Sassman, all the other guys that are supposedly Satoshi, Adam Back. So he was really good friends with Adam Back, and he was really good friends with Hal, who Hal received the first Bitcoin. So he knew Hal. So he had written the paper on distributed ledger, and then it took him 10 years to get the other pieces. And the other piece was really the proof of work system that Adam Back had built. So his first email was to Adam Back with the white paper, and you can go find that email. And he says, check out what I wrote. I need to cite you because I'm using your proof of work system. And you know what Adam says? He goes, okay, sounds good. Go for it. This looks oddly familiar to something that my friend wrote. Maybe you should go talk to my friend. Then Satoshi 2 days later sends an email to that friend saying, hey, Adam said you should take a look at this. I want to cite your paper in this. And that person goes, okay, seems interesting. Kind of gives him some feedback, but doesn't involve himself. Isn't excited by the fact that a paper he wrote 10 years ago all of a sudden comes to fruition, becomes live. He's just like, not interested. So he gives a little bit of feedback and then disappears. Never heard from again. And the claim of why he's not Satoshi is because he said he's not, and because the second email seems obvious that he's two different people. That was it. He was in front of us the whole time, and nobody figured this out. So that's what I think. Now, the key piece that really solidified this is the gentleman in the pool showed me this developer's GitHub. And when you go look at his GitHub repository, there's an interesting chronological gap. He's really active in his GitHub commits for well over a decade, but suddenly disappears for about an 8-month period in 2008. So he was working on a different project at that time. Could be something.
But has never liquidated, has never shown himself. What would be the purpose?
To protect the network. Yeah. I mean, well, one, life risk, right? You're your prime kidnapping target now. If anybody found out who you were. Two, that was the ethos of Bitcoin. He had to, in order to make it as successful as it is, he needs to never touch those coins, because if he does, it compromises a little bit of the system. It honestly, we've reached a point where it wouldn't compromise it that much, but it's not worth the risk to him. He doesn't need it. He was able to build what he wanted to build. He probably made plenty of money doing it too. I'm sure he's a smart enough guy to have made money on Bitcoin. And then the rest of it, he doesn't need it. His baby's born. He's a silent, quiet guy. He doesn't want much attention. The other guy was able to get in touch with him a few times, sort of anonymously, because he still runs websites, and you can try and ping him and stuff, but
like you said, he could have been creative enough about how he can monetarily benefit over time, and then keep the mystery, the mystique, the tale, and us guessing. I've heard political leaders, I've heard social media CEOs and other CEOs, and good reasoning, good theories behind, hey, this is why they are Satoshi. So the fact that you're able to follow the paper trail and pin it back to these conversations is pretty impressive.
Yeah. So my guess is Satoshi is actually the second person that Satoshi ever emailed, because he was emailing himself, referencing the paper he wrote himself 10 years ago. That's my opinion.
Is there a name for anyone who wants to track him down?
I think they should look it up. I figure you were Googling who's the second person that Satoshi ever emailed. You'd always do that if you wanted to, but I won't say the name. People got to look it up for themselves if they're interested.
So we have the task. We're going to be looking for it on our side. Listeners, viewers, recommend you do the same. I've gotten so much out of this conversation, Andrew. I've taken 2 pages of notes here. I want to keep the discussion going, want to be respectful to your time. But for anyone who's tuned in that would like to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do so, and where can they go to learn more?
So you can reach out to me. My email is andrew@mastermind.xyz. And you can check out mastermind.xyz for more information on our company. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And if anybody has any questions or if they want to dig into anything related to what I've discussed around Bitcoin mining or Bitcoin or Web3 development, I'm always looking for partners, partnership opportunities, and just helping. I've got that teacher mentality, so I just like sharing all the knowledge that I've accumulated over the last 20 years.
And highly encourage everyone who's watching to do so. Andrew, thank you so much for the time today. Really enjoyed the discussion. I learned a lot myself, like you said you would, break it down to that level. So thank you for doing this. I'm sure everyone's appreciative here as well.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Take care.